Good afternoon. So carrying on with the spiritual praxis, chapter 5, we're on page 99, Interconnecting Wisdom from Buddhist Eco-theology. I wasn't the first Catholic to find wisdom in Buddhist teachings. Thomas Merton and Thomas Berry both wrote books decades ago. This different from my Catholic upbringing, bringing cosmology and practice, provided insight into the nature of humans, nature, and God. Buddhist eco-theologians stress the importance of hope and active meditation exercises to realize a more sustainable and interconnected relationship with the environment. Quote from Macy and Brown, "We can choose life. Dire predictions notwithstanding, we can still act to ensure a living world." End quote. Music educators can choose life in our work to recover the planet, acting in the small ways of our profession provides. Regardless of what work you do, part of our work is to help bring about a collective healing, transformation, and awakening for our own well-being and for the sake of the planet. The insight of inner being can help in this, but we need a collective awakening, end quote. And that's from Thich Nhat Hanh. Accordingly, people and nature are interconnected, interbeing, in ways we may not be fully conscious of. The radiant and elegant cosmos that we can observe is in fact our own consciousness itself and not something outside of it. Mindfulness, which in turn increases consciousness of interconnectedness and love for the earth, is practiced daily through meditating during usual everyday activities. For deep ecologist and Buddhist Joanna Macy, despair caused by ecological crises requires a calming, spiritual response. When we begin to meditate, we become aware of our pain and natures are one. Feelings of pain for the world arise. They recommend a series of meditation exercises to gain insight into our wisdom and power to communicate, plan, and act for ecological change. Sentence 5. Musicers creatively music for spiritual aims out of a sense of duty towards people and creation in recognition of interconnection with other people and creation. Creative vignette. My ear, defenseless and always open, rings, stressed by the clang of society, by television pundits, internet trolls, and incessant news, by politicians bought and sold by big polluting industry, and by family and friends corrupted by globalized denier discourse. My head spins. Weighed down by dissonance, I sink and gasp for breath. I'm unable to hear my voice in the cacophony. Urged by a favorite poet's words, I go to the woods alone. Mary Oliver. I sit on a fallen maple. Allow the cool earth to penetrate my flesh and breathe slowly. Unruffled by the harsh music, chipmunks play on leaves and dirt. On creation, I listen. I permit the discord to dissolve, allowing healing melodies of nature to hold my consciousness. In the soothing soundscape, I embrace the tree below and become invisible to myself in the great work, recovery. A song emerges from the roots of the tree of life to the utmost branches and resonates through God's cosmos. Viable humans and viable music education praxis. Perhaps the greatest challenge facing people living in modern industrialized society is viability. Spirituality begins by slowing down, reflecting, and recognizing what we can and cannot accomplish. Humans play a role in the cosmos, but it is not necessarily Promethean. Living humbly, music educators can help students realize sustainable lifestyle by counteracting society's competitive elements. To remain viable, the individual person must realize interconnections with other people, interconnections with nature, and develop a deeply historical perspective. What Thomas Berry called the Earth story. In this way, self-cultivation can become realization of the broader self. Arnie Ness discusses self-realization, what I call self-cultivation, see Gossett and Shevock. In line with Catholic eco-theology, Ness recognized the connection between economics and self-realization. Quote, severe threats to economic interests correspond to possibilities of severely reduced self-realization, end quote. He also recognizes the interconnected nature of people. The absolutely highest level of self-realization cannot be reached by anybody without all others also reaching that level. He also connects the recognition of others' rights to self-realization. Those rights are connected to non-human animals, bears, sheep, wolves. He calls this species egalitarianism, the equal right of and principle of all species to live and flourish. In music education, we can recognize the rights of non-human beings to music for self-cultivation within their own conception of it. Sentence 6. Musicers creatively music for spiritual aims out of a sense of duty toward people and creation, in recognition of interconnection with other people and creation, and in acknowledgement of all beings' right to self-cultivation. Up to page 101, A Deep Ecology Musicking Spirituality. Deep ecology has a uniquely spiritual aspect. Musicking can be vital for spiritual praxis. For Duvall, writing music and poetry can cultivate an appreciation for our relationships to and the value of all living beings. Referring to Paul Winter, George Winston, Buffy Sainte-Marie, and others, Duvall suggests music coming from the intuition of deep ecology paradoxically expresses the great silence. Sounds resonate with earth and sky. Going to nature is often described as finding silence. I explore this idea when I compose and perform ecological jazz inspired by Paul Winter's compositions with whales, wolves, and other non-human animals. In this practice, I record non-human musicking. I modify it and use it to inspire composing beats, chord progressions, and melodies. Ecological jazz recognizes the intrinsic value of non-human musicking, the importance of place, and is a creative practice. As such, it is a viable spiritual expression of musicking on soil. Paradox is part of spirituality. Silence to sound is one paradox. To practice interconnected spirituality in our daily lives, we recognize disconnected and alienating aspects of global institutions and, as a result, many people living today. That which is outside of us is inside. Global change must begin by listening to our local places. This localization of change recognizes the importance of grassroots activity. People in community choosing not to live unsustainable, generalizable lives. The primary paradox is that many people live unsustainable lives as consumerist cogs in a global industrial economy. The paradox is resolved with the realization that all generalized answers are oppressive to some people somewhere. In recognizing the oppression of the global institutions, even ones acting for a good, people can react in ways that further damage their local places. For instance, police officers, particularly those who selected this profession to protect their local community, can find themselves defending global industries against their own community members who want less pollution or polluted water, or to keep cherished mountain from mountaintop removal. Only by empowering local people to listen to their soil, global ecological crises like climate change can be resolved. This listening is ecological, interconnected, independent, and spiritual religious, like the ligaments of a body. Because of our work with the sound and silence of creation and creating communities, music educators reside in a distinctive position to begin this work. This involves acting with skepticism towards institutions we work for. For music educators with one foot in the schoolroom and the other in the community, empowering people in challenging institutions is possible. I would think business people don't lop off mountains in our hometowns for marginally greater profit in coal extraction. Schools shouldn't lop off local musics. Generalized values, like those held by shareholders and education policymakers, are needed to commit such ghastly wrongdoings. If music education will be viable, if we are to cultivate viable humans, it should be spiritually reconnecting, localizing, and skeptical of institutions, even ones that aim, in theory, to do good. Sentence 7, this is the final one. Holding the potential paradox of internal and external silence and sound, of working for and against institutions, musicers creatively music for spiritual aims out of a sense of duty toward people and creation, in recognition of interconnection with other people and creation, and in self-cultivation and acknowledgement of all beings' right to self-cultivation. And finally, I have a figure, 5.1, a spiritual praxis, where we have institutions trying to hold down musicers. We have silence and sound and creation. And a poem at the end of chapter 5. Sounding wild, hearing wild. All that thrives within the mind, all that loves, lives, and binds, all that moves, all that waits, all that's cruel and kind, comes from old and ancient oak, comes from Gabriel's horn first spoke, comes asleep when dreamers woke, wakening to truth non-remote. Windy, chilling wilderness, charming sunny wilderness, thunder crashing wilderness, dying stags of wilderness, living wild, loving wild, sounding wild, hearing wild.